So hey anime fans. The series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with the Incredible. So let's start the series. An elderly man's face broke into a melancholy smile as he considered his next course of action. Only a month had passed since legendary Sannin learned about the emergence of a new group that intended to conquer the globe. They called themselves the Dangerous Clan, and they intended to assemble all of the Jinchuriki and use their strength for a purpose that legendary Sannin was unaware of at the time. Nevertheless, being the brave guy that he was, he set to work right once to figure out how to prevent these evil men from accomplishing their objectives. He was pleased to report that he had discovered a solution in the form of a seal while looking through the ruins of Yuzu no Kuni. Obviously, in the case of a human, legendary Sannin had no way of knowing what would happen on the other side, or where anyone would land up assuming they survived at all. However, this specific seal possessed the ability to transport an object or person to another dimension. In any case, the needs of many people ultimately outweigh those of one boy. Yes, he intended to use this specific spirit art on a young Naruto, who had just recently attained the rank of genin, by learning to use shadow clones. This was quite an accomplishment for the sage, but it seemed like it would all be for nothing in this instance. Some of you may be wondering, how could legendary Sannin do this to an innocent boy? Or how could he do this to his own godson? The answer is straightforward. Naruto's life had been a mess, and regardless of what the young boy did in the future, legendary Sannin was well aware that the child would always be held accountable for who he was. Legendary Sannin was able to do this with a clear conscience because he believed that it was giving the boy a second chance at life, one that was free of such suffering and loneliness that he hardly understood what the word hug meant. If anything, he saw it as a gesture of kindness to his godson, giving him a chance that no other human sacrifice had ever had. In order to be extra certain, legendary Sannin used his transparent escape technique to sneak behind the orange-clad 12-year-old. He was glad to do so when he realized the level of training the boy was at. The old sage now realized that Naruto had been using the most crucial ninja tool for most of his life: deception. He was somewhat proud that his godson was so gifted that he was trying to use high ninja training to low Jonin-level core energy control techniques, but he quickly wiped that pride away, because he had done nothing to deserve it. He had left the boy to fend for himself in a hateful village, simply because he couldn't control his vices. How the blonde managed to fool his sensei and the third headmaster was beyond legendary Sannin. His surprise skyrocketed as he snuck up on the unwary preteen, but as he was about to strike him to knock him out, he noticed a slight twitch in the boy's shoulder, indicating that the boy had actually managed to detect him while he was invisible. He would now make amends for that. Legendary Sannin determined that the youngster would have been great, but sadly, that would not be the case this time. Perhaps in this new planet. He noticed a lot of smoke coming from the nearby woodland as he caught the youngster as he fell backwards. He thought it was strange that he couldn't smell a fire. Choosing to ignore the situation because, after all, he had a job to do, he began removing the boy from the village and out of sight of onlookers, while muttering to himself how simple it was for him to do so. After everything was finished, he would need to speak with his sensei. After spending a good hour or two away from the village, he located a cave, started writing the seal on the floor, dried it with his core energy, and then laid the boy down in the middle, face up at the cave's roof. He then placed a few scrolls on the boy's body that could only be opened with his blood. In addition to signed copies of each of his books, these scrolls would provide the boy with all the information he deserved about his heritage and his father's favorite spirit art pieces, among other things that legendary Sannin chose to include to support his godson on his journey into adulthood. Hey, he had to give Naruto something to remember him by, and the opportunity to spread his twisted creations to another dimension was reserved for the elderly man. Putting everything else aside, legendary Sannin was now ready to start the seal that would hopefully take his godson to a better life in a different dimension, while also protecting the elemental nations from the Dangerous clan. Yes, legendary Sannin would now sacrifice one in order to save many. Legendary Sannin soon found himself struggling with the sheer amount of core energy required for this technique to work, but he refused to give up as he pumped everything he had into the seal, as the light show it was producing grew more intense. Slowly, the Toad Sage's core energy ran throughout the seal, as the dark cave soon became lit with a wide array of colors. In front of legendary Sannin's eyes, Naruto's body started to waver, going in and out of existence. The light show soon became so strong that legendary Sannin had to close his eyes, while continuing to pump core energy into the seal. A boom soon followed, shaking the cave but keeping it strong, for which he would always be grateful. Perhaps he hadn't given it enough thought. But when he opened his eyes again, the old man was pleased to see that Naruto's body had vanished along with the seal. After a few more minutes of recuperation, he once more scheduled a time for Konoha to inform his sensei of what he had just done. In the interim, when Naruto awoke, he was in a sewer that was by this point quite known to him. He wondered how someone could have sneaked up on him and knocked him unconscious, let alone send him here. He approached the bars in front of him and said. The blonde was met with a roar of defiance from behind the bars, before a fox head the size of a mountain suddenly shot out of the darkness with a menacing snare at the young boy in front of it. Yo, fuzzball, what the hell's going on? He asked in a questioning, a slightly irritated tone of voice. Let it be known that Naruto was not the kind of guy who liked to be fucked around. No, he left that to the man in the pink kimono. Naruto simply smiled back at the demon in front of him before responding in a deadpan tone, indicating that he was not fazed. You would dare to talk to the king of all demons in such a tone? I should rip your throat out. First of all, we both know that you're not even a demon, let alone the king of them. You are merely a hunk of core energy concentrated together to form an agro fox, who thinks he's all that. Second of all, we both know that even if you were to try and kill me, the seal would undoubtedly prevent it. Now, just what is happening to me that made it so I needed to be here? When Naruto heard the question, Nine Fox, also known as Nine Beast, only growled at the agro fox remark before furiously frowning. It would seem your supposed godfather had returned to the village only to knock you out, take you to a cave roughly an hour or so outside of Konoha, where he finally set about resting you on top of an ancient Uzumaki seal with a letter from your mother and father, along with your rightful heirlooms, and a few spirit arts and techniques. He then decided, like an idiot, he would activate the seal in an attempt to send us to a different dimension. After a moment of indifference, Naruto queried Nine Beast in a tone that was a little hopeful. And did it work? The legendary god, also referred to as the Sage of Six Paths, was the first human he had ever revered, and Nine Beast chose to assist him despite his amused snort. Yes, it worked, but in doing so it did something that even I could not predict. The sheer forces acting on your body was too much for it to handle, and before I could manage to do anything it had already severely damaged your core energy pathways, meaning that while you can still use it for Tai spirit art like Rock Lee, you wouldn't be able to use it for any spirit art outside of the occasional weak E or maybe D-rank spirit art, but even then it is risky. The nine-tailed core energy beast allowed that to sink briefly before continuing with Naruto's nod. Now normally I could just shot some of my core energy through, but unfortunately in order for us to even survive I had to have nearly all of my power stripped from me, as I now only have enough to survive. Like some common civilian. Sigh. But I did manage to give you one thing before I lost all my power. That caught Naruto's attention, and he now focused entirely on what the not-so-giant mass of core energy was saying to him. Nine Beast once more let a smirk cross his face, as he allowed the silence to continue in order to retaliate against the boy, and then he continued again, once he was certain the still somewhat childish boy had lost it entirely. I managed to give you a sort of Kekkei Jinkai that gives you control over everything to do with heat. What I mean by that is that you can control the heat around you, whether it be at the warmth of a sunny day, or the heat of a molten furnace. You can control it through touch alone, as long as it is hot, and who knows, maybe in the future, once you gain more control, you might be able to send it out in waves. Nine Beasts now smiled at the response he was getting. It had been very difficult to think of that on the spot, and he had to admit that he was quite proud of it. He knew that Naruto would succeed in this new world, regardless of how strong the people were, if he practiced it even half as much as he did with spirit art in Konoha. Naruto remarked, so I'm pretty much the opposite of an Iceman, huh? Nine Beasts simply stared in confusion for a time before responding. Naruto merely shrugged and said, I guess so, though I don't know what that's got to do with anything. I don't know, I just got a strange feeling that I'll be pissing off a snowman sometime soon. This just made Nine Beast even more perplexed before he ultimately determined that Naruto could return to his body. After a short brush off, Naruto started to walk for a ladder out of there, but when he reached the top and opened the metal disc, he was only able to say one word. He woke up in a genuine sewer where the water could actually stain his clothes. Incredible. Incredible. The blonde was surrounded by metal-like buildings that were all higher than the headmaster tower. He received some strange looks as he clambered out of the sewage hole, but then everyone else went about their daily lives as usual. He now stood on what appeared to be a pathway composed of materials similar to those of the nearby structures. After returning the disc to its proper location, he considered his options until a familiar growling voice tore through his thoughts. Find a library or place of learning, and learn about this new world that we are in. Thinking the idea had some merit, he decided to listen to the fox's instructions for once, before attempting to locate a place of learning. This proved to be a challenging task, though, as Naruto discovered that he was unable to read any signs, and whenever he tried to ask someone, they would either ignore him or simply stare at me, as if I were speaking a completely different language or something. That is, until Naruto ran into someone and knocked them both down. Naruto looked up and saw a figure that reminded him of the appearance of some of the villagers who were concealed in the clouds. He was about 6 feet tall, completely bald, and had dark skin. He wore a gray turtleneck long-sleeved sweater that was mostly covered by a brown leather jacket. He wore long black dress pants that hung down to black leather-pointed shoes. Naruto thought the man's attire was ridiculous, but he was willing to overlook it and not voice his own opinion, given what everyone else was wearing and his own current wardrobe. The black man spoke up after the two stood up and stared at one another for a minute. Before Naruto made the decision to express his own thoughts, he simply got a blank look from the blonde lad. Yo, I would normally start yelling about what the hell you were looking at, but seeing your current attire and state of dress. Yeah, I'm not going to bother, need some help. Speak in a language I can understand, old man. He was taken aback when the old man gave him an irritated expression before responding in his native tongue. Old man, I'm 32 years old, how the hell is that, old man? Normally, this would prompt Naruto to make another insensitive comment, but he ignored it again because he truly needed to learn about this world, and this old man was currently his only source. So he started asking questions. He chose to start with the fundamentals, asking, how can you understand and talk back to me when no one else can? The man in front of him appeared to clam up for a moment, which was a clear indication to Naruto that he didn't want to give the youngster the truth. His response was, I learned Japanese in school. Naruto chose to act naive for the time being by nodding his head in agreement and feeling incredibly fortunate to discover that his native tongue was also spoken in a different dimension. Naruto then asked for directions to the closest learning facility, and was taken aback when the man offered to not only give him directions, but also show him the way there, since it appeared he was going in that direction. Naruto decided he liked this man because, despite being a civilian, and Naruto can still sense core energy in other people, he knew not to divulge all of his personal information to a stranger. They conversed and got to know one another better on the way there, each of them only disclosing the information that was necessary. Naruto was still able to learn that he had a wife named Kana, and that they lived in a purportedly wonderful apartment. He also discovered that his name was Lucius Best, that he enjoyed winter sports like snowboarding and skiing, and that his best buddy was a man named Bob. Naruto then revealed to Lucius his first name, and that he was an orphan who enjoyed learning new things, gardening, and pulling practical jokes, which is why he was looking for a school. The two quickly reached the largest library he had ever seen, which he thought was not particularly impressive, given that it was only the second one. Nevertheless, he thought that 3 stories worth of books was a sizable collection. The two entered together and proceeded to the counter to inquire about the kinds of books they were looking for. He became somewhat irate when he didn't understand what the man was asking for, so he made the decision to ask the man who had brought him to the library, to ask the receptionist where he could find books to help him learn how to write and speak English. The man grinned and did just that, which made Naruto suspicious because he had never been treated so well in his life, not even that cunning old headmaster had behaved so well toward him. He would still keep a watchful eye on him and grab what he could, because he knew this man was willing to aid him, because he didn't know what he contained. As he led the boy to a section dedicated to learning new languages, Lucius couldn't help but feel bad about the orphan boy's vigilance behind him, and wondered what kind of life the boy would have had to lead. Nevertheless, he made the decision to help the boy stand on his own 2 feet, as if he were his own right then and there. He wasn't an ex-superhero for nothing. Additionally, he wanted to play a significant role in this boy's life, since he felt that he was unique. The blonde assumed that Lucius would finally leave him to pursue his own interests once they arrived at the section Naruto was looking for, but he was shocked once more when he didn't. In reality, the man had already gone about obtaining the appropriate books before moving to a nearby open computer, where he then adjusted his seat and gestured for Naruto to grab a chair and sit next to him. Although Naruto was now even more wary of the black guy, he made the decision to follow his advice, albeit cautiously and slowly. He was certain that he could defeat the man, but he would leave nothing to surprise. He chose to be a little more outspoken about his concerns as he sat down next to the man and inquired. Lucius stared at the boy for a moment, not understanding what he was saying, but then it dawned on him. He immediately started waving his arms in a conciliatory manner before he spoke up and responded to the boy's question, "Why are you doing all this? What is it you have to gain?" He chose to trust him for the time being after seeing the truth in the man's eyes, but he now had a new query in mind. "I have nothing to gain from this, nothing at all," he said. Lucius was taken aback by the straightforward question, then, "Why?" and started to explain why he was acting in this way since he did not fully understand himself. Nevertheless, he quickly realized his mistake and responded to the blonde's query by replying. After hearing him say, "I don't really know, all I know is I see a child in trouble who needs help that I am able to provide," Lucius was inspired to consider a new career on television. However, his bubble was burst when Naruto was accepted because, even though he didn't trust the man, he would still use him as a resource and be cautious. If the man tried anything, he would use all his power to bust out. Hours later, the two were tapped on the shoulder and informed that the library was about to close. Blushing slightly in embarrassment, they got up and left the building. It appeared that they had spent the majority of the day there because they arrived at around 11 a.m., and it was now 5 p.m. Naruto was shocked that he had spent so much time with a person who did not despise him. It was getting late, and he still had nowhere to go for the night, so he started to leave, but Lucius called out to him before he could take more than 2 steps. At the boy's head shake, Lucius felt sorry for him and was pleased with his earlier choice. "And where do you think you're going? Do you even have a roof for tonight?" Lucius asked. After a long moment of slack jaw, Naruto smirked and said, "Then why don't you come home with me?" Lucius stammered, then muttered something about ungrateful little children before grinning at the boy in front of him once more. "And what your wife think, bringing home a complete stranger and a little boy at that," he said. Naruto reluctantly nodded. This is my decision, and besides, where else are you going to go? Before returning to the man and starting to follow him to his new home, his new life. The two were shocked to find Lucius's apartment empty and pitch black when they got there. As they walked around, they saw that nothing had changed since Lucius left, not even a note, and Lucius was beginning to worry a little before they decided to check the one room they hadn't, his and her bedroom. Who knows, maybe she had gone to bed at 5:30, but that's not likely. A flush was heard coming from the ensuite bathroom, before the door opened to reveal Kana in lingerie before she burped, scratched her ass, and walked over to the king-size bed, before she even noticed who was at the door. When they opened the door, they both discovered an empty bed, which sent a shock of anxiety up Lucius's back before he noticed with a hint of dread, the scented candles and rose petals that seemed to be strung around in random places. Now, Naruto couldn't speak as he considered how fortunate the man next to him was. After all, who doesn't desire a wife who can burp? It appeared that even this far into their relationship, Lucius was still unable to control himself, as the blonde rolled on the ground laughing in the following image, as he watched blood stream out of his nose as he flew back out of the room. Ha, Naruto thought, perverts exist in every dimension. And they are all just as funny. Then he started laughing once again, but a furious-looking Kana knocked him unconscious. Naruto woke up with his eyes closed, and started using all of his other developed senses to detect even the smallest movement in the area. He soon recalled why he had been knocked unconscious in the first place, and had to suppress a grin that was about to appear on his face when he heard it. What do you mean you want to adopt him? Naruto lay motionless as Kana's words really resonated with him. Despite his senses telling him to leave as quickly as possible, his heart would not permit it. Something inside kept him exactly where he was, and up until this point, Naruto had always believed he had lost everything. Hope. Naruto found it strange because, despite his desire to become a powerful man, he had never even considered having a real family. The idea of having a mother who would give him a sense of home and a father he could look up to and aspire to be like caused unshed tears to well up in his eyes. Lucius said, "Not so loud, Kana, you might wake him, and I haven't even told him about it yet," in a whispered voice that made Naruto strain to hear. As a strange warm feeling seemed to spread throughout the blonde's body, Naruto could feel the hope growing inside of him. Was this how it felt to be wanted? He wondered. Kana retorted in a tone that seemed to Naruto to be angry. "What do you mean he doesn't know yet? You brought him home for Christ's sake." Although Lucius's statements confused Naruto, he continued to listen and chose to ponder about it later. "He merely thinks we're giving him a roof for the night. Besides, I always wanted a son, and since you can't have one, why don't we just give this a try?" Kana said, "I know that, and I've always wanted to be a mother. But it's just so sudden," before trembling a little at the end, or at least that's what Naruto thought before he noticed a change in the bed he was lying in, as Lucius leaned closer to his wife, hugged her, and started muttering soothing words. In the end, Naruto allowed his thoughts to wander as he considered the implications of everything, and repeatedly asked himself how honest he should be with his parents if everything remained true. Should he explain his background to them? He didn't consider the old pervert his godfather, so he had completely forgotten about the scrolls he had left behind. Keeping that in mind, he waited until both adults had left, plus a few minutes before opening his eyes to one of the rooms he had passed while looking for Kana with Lucius. Given that there was nothing inside, Naruto assumed it was a guest room, even though it was still far superior to any place he had ever lived in, much better than a trash can, at least. He sat up, looked in his pockets, and discovered 3 scrolls. The first one he selected was red and featured the toad symbol. He opened it by putting some of his blood on it, made possible by 9 Beast, and discovered that it was from the pervert hermit. He immediately wanted to discard it, and if 9 Beast hadn't insisted, he would have. "Hello, young one. Listen, even though I realize you probably want to ignore this and go on, I felt I should at least explain why I transported you to another dimension, and why you were alone. First off, I could have brought you along or even just stopped by Konoha once a month, but I'm ashamed to say that due to my vices, the first option wouldn't have worked out, because a baby shouldn't be brought in the kinds of places I frequent. It's also specifically because of this vice that I didn't return at all, because every time I considered it, there was another brothel in town, and I was confident that my sensei would be taking good care of you. I now realize that I was mistaken because my sensei was unaware of your strength, but I still cannot alter the past. I sent you away because a new group was forming and intended to use all of the Jinchuriki for an unidentified plan. I started looking for a way to stop them, and I discovered that in the ruins of Yuzu no Kuni, I could send you to another dimension in order to save the elemental nations, and give you another chance with a guardian who, hopefully, isn't as hopeless as I am. Along with a signed copy of each of my books, I also left you a few spirit art pieces. The scroll with the Uzumaki crest on it is one of the spirit art pieces your parents saved for you. From the renowned Sannin." Naruto was thankful for the spirit art, and knew that at least the first book of legendary Sannins was supposed to be good, even though he was a little relieved to know why the man had done what he had. He rolled up the scroll and set it aside, and he did the same with the scroll that had the Uzumaki swirl on it. Then, thinking that perhaps this was a sign from Kami about how screwed up his life is, he turned to the last scroll, which was a blazing orange color that made the preteen sweat. Nevertheless, he opened the scroll, and as soon as he saw the first words, silent tears started to pour down his face. Dedicated to my little kid, a Takanoko. We have left you everything we own and can only hope that the village will treat you well. As a former container, I have my doubts because people cannot look past their own hazed anger long enough to see who you truly are. It hurts me so much that neither your father nor I will be there for you when you grow up, but even as I write this with my thoughts as I die, I know that you will become great just like your father and I did before you. Though I can't write in this because your father gave his soul to the Shinigami to save the village, I want you to know that he loved you with all of his heart and was eager to raise his son to be a man we could both be proud of. Know that I still love you with all of my heart and that I will continue to watch over you from above. Among other things, we have left you some pieces of spirit art in a separate scroll that has been passed down from the Uzumaki clan head to clan head, which you are now. Farewell, my darling. From your Akasan, Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze, in case you were unaware. P.S. The fourth headmaster was your father, Minato Namikaze. P.S.S. Make sure I have lots of grandchildren to spoil. When Naruto was unable to contain his tears, he let out a horrifying sob, and then continued to bawl his eyes, making sure that none of them fell on the letters from his Akasan. He was too preoccupied with his own loss to notice the room's door opening, and Nine Beasts sensed that Kana had no malicious intent as she approached the blonde. Naruto didn't notice her until she was virtually holding him. He turned to embrace the person who had entered the room, without caring who it was, as he looked for anything to console him at his difficult moment. When the blonde child gave her a hug, Kana felt a rush of happiness go up her spine. It took her a moment to realize how distraught the young boy was, so she decided to offer him the comfort he wanted, by giving him a hug in return. When Lucius entered the room, he couldn't help but smile before leaving the two of them alone. He was now almost certain that he would have a son. Kana grinned down at the boy in her arms, and felt him nod off before she turned to see what the boy had been reading, and realized she didn't understand a word of it, but based on the boy's intense crying, she assumed it was a letter from his parents or something. She rolled up the scrolls and put them aside before picking up Naruto and tucking him in under the blankets. She thought that perhaps she was ready to have a son, even though he was already 12, when she observed his smile as a result of her activities. Naruto woke up the following morning to a smell he had never experienced before, and it was pleasant. Recalling what had happened before he went to sleep, he blushed at how frail he must have appeared before he hurriedly searched for his scrolls and final family remembrances. He discovered them on a shelf, grinned, and then became alarmed as he questioned whether Kana had been able to read them. He quickly threw that idea out of his head, but he was certain that she would have thrown him out if that were the case. Unsure of what to do next, the blonde followed his nose, which led him out of the room and down the hallway to a kitchen area that was connected to a dining room, where Naruto could see Lucius and Kana seated. Before he screamed, he lowered his head so his upper body was perpendicular to his legs, as soon as the two turned to face him. Arigato for everything you have done for me, and I'm sorry for being the burden that I was. The two adults stood up from the table and gave Naruto a surprise family hug before they slowly walked away and motioned for him to follow them to the dining table, where a plate was already prepared for him. Although only Lucius could fully comprehend what the boy meant, Kana understood it easily. The boy was naturally curious and asked what the food on the plate was. A stack of 6 pancakes with maple syrup because he had never seen it before. Before he could start eating, he heard Kana cough and noticed that she was nodding her head at some silver objects that were next to the plate. He put the 2 silver objects in one hand, thinking they might be chopsticks, but soon realized that wasn't working before he heard another cough, this time toward Lucius. It appeared that the older man was attempting to teach the blonde how to use the silver objects, so Naruto nodded his head in comprehension before listening intently as Lucius used the spiky silver object to pin the food down, before he cut the pancake with the other silver object, and ate the piece of food that was attached to the spiky silver object. Now that he knew how to utilize the alien object, he started by inserting his spiky silver object into the top pancake, and then gradually pushing it all the way down. Before either adult could correct him, the youngster grabbed all the pancakes and pushed them down his throat. Although this made Lucius laugh a little and freak Kana out, it also demonstrated that the child was badly starved as a child, as evidenced by his short stature for his age, and both of them agreed to deal with that as soon as possible. Following that brief exchange, the trio swiftly began getting to know one another better, with Lucius serving as a translator. They discovered that they both enjoyed gardening, and Kana would look into getting some plants for the windowsills. At that point, Lucius made the decision to surprise Naruto by asking. No one dared to speak during the moment of truth, so there was a deadly stillness in the dining room. Anyway, Naruto, me and Kana have talked it over, and we were wondering if you would like to become our son. Lucius groaned, knowing what was about to happen, and Naruto then adopted a malicious sneer. Okay. Then, as Lucius struggled to understand what had happened, he fell out of his chair and heard the boy laugh loudly. His own wife tried to cover her laughing with her hand, but Lucius spoke up again, smirking triumphantly, saying. After processing what Lucius had just said, Naruto stopped laughing altogether and cried out for everyone to hear. Yeah, well, we'll see who's laughing when I sign you up for school next month. Naruto best. Eee. Meanwhile, in the background, Lucius's malevolent laughing could be heard. The three had become much closer in the month, since it was decided that Naruto would be the newest member of the best family. Naruto adapted to the new language like a fish to water, and was now able to carry on conversations with Kana, having trouble with only a few words while maintaining a strong accent. These two in particular had become close over the past month as they discovered they had a lot in common. For example, the blonde was naturally good at household chores, because he had been doing them all his life, and cooking was a new hobby of his, but the 30-year-old woman frequently asked him to help prepare dinner. The last straw, though, was their agreement to purchase some flowers that the two would look after over the next few weeks. The blonde's experience with Lucius was completely different because, rather than bonding over household tasks, cooking, and gardening, the two bonded over physical activity and sports. Naruto had learned about a lot of sports played in this new world, and was impressed by the concepts of most of them, because, aside from playing ninja, which kind of lost its purpose once you actually became one, baseball was the sport that had most appealed to the blonde. Another thing that improved the three of them was that they had gradually started calling each other by nicknames. Naruto wasn't quite ready to call the two adults mom or dad yet, and Lucius and Kana respected that by giving him one of their own. It also helped that it was Lucius's favorite sport, and Naruto was eager to learn how to play, so he could join the school team and impress his adoptive father. Because of Naruto's favorite baseball team, Lucius was now known as Kabu. Kana is Lingerie-chan following Naruto's initial encounter with him. Additionally, Naruto was given the nicknames Naru-chan by Lucius and Naru-kun by Kana. Although Naruto pretended to be depressed about returning to something akin to the academy from his original world, he was actually looking forward to meeting children his own age, who weren't fed information about how he was a monster by their parents. The month the three of them had been together also proved to be fruitful, as Lucius obtained the documents they needed to make it official, and shortly after that, he signed Naruto up for the start of the next term of school, where he would be transferring in for the start of the previous term. Throughout the month, Naruto had only ever briefly discussed his early years with his new adoptive parents. They never coerced him because they believed he would eventually tell them everything. Nevertheless, due to all the new things in his life, Naruto's time for physical training was limited. However, Naruto had made steady progress in learning about his new powers, thanks to an agreement with Nine Beast that required him to practice using his power over heat while he slept. He had discovered that, while his abilities so far seemed to allow him to heat anything up, there was some difficulty when tests were conducted to see if he could create fire. It appeared that even though Naruto could generate fire by heating the surrounding air to a great degree, he lacked the ability to control it once it had been created. He also realized that even though he could generate heat, his body was not impervious to it, and would still burn if the fire got too close. If Naruto were to use fire in combat, he would likely need to find fireproof clothing, and develop better control over his own abilities. That brings us to today, Naruto's first day of school. He was simply relieved that they didn't require him to wear a uniform, as Kabu had said he would in a few more years. With the aid of a healthy diet, Naruto was now 5 feet tall, which was a respectable height for his age. He was wearing a burnt orange sweatshirt hoodie with black long sleeves, that featured the same black design that was on his stomach over the middle of his chest. The Uzumaki family crest, which was red and black, was almost entirely covered on the back of the sweatshirt. The preteen wore black jeans for pants, which fell over his burnt orange Converse shoes. Damn it, it was a good color. He had kept his hit-eye around his arm, not as a memento of his home, but rather of the only person from his past that he would really miss. Iruka. He had dyed the shirt black to give the impression that the metal piece was sewn into his shirt from afar. He walked out with Kabu, swinging his bag over his shoulder, to the car before being driven to school. After saying goodbye and being told to see the principal first, he got out of the car and started to walk toward the school's entrance. He climbed the stairs and started to navigate the building, trying not to get lost, because it was much larger than the academy he had previously attended. When he finally located the principal's office door, he knocked 3 times before waiting. A few seconds later, he was instructed to enter, and the moment he opened it, he was reminded of the headmaster's office in Konoha, because it was quite similar, if not identical. A man who appeared to be getting on in years was sitting behind a big desk in the middle of the room. He had a head of white hair above his wrinkled face, and Naruto saw a genuine smile cross the man's face as he looked at him. The boy was relieved to see that it was different from the fake one the third had placed around him. The elderly guy remarked in a gentle manner, "You must be Naruto, how are you doing?" Naruto simply shrugged before responding. After responding with a loud laugh, the elderly man said, "I'm doing well, what about you, old man?" He went on to say that he was shocked that a student had the audacity to call him that before politely asking the boy to call him Mr. Henderson when they were around other people, to which Naruto already liked the man. After giving him a brief tour of the school, the enthusiastic principal introduced Naruto to school life, which was undoubtedly an odd experience. Mr. Henderson then led Naruto to the classroom where he would spend the remainder of this academic year. Before Naruto was introduced to the class, the two knocked on the door and were allowed inside room 13. The principal left the classroom as Naruto took the stage. "Class, we have a new student entering our classroom today and I expect you to integrate him into our class with kindness and help him with his learning. Now, why don't you introduce yourself?" Naruto was on his way to pick a chair when one of the children behind him cried out, "My name is Naruto Uzumaki Best, and I will be your classmate until the end of this year." At the nod from his new teacher, who he recognized by a name written in the upper right corner of the whiteboard as Mr. Smith, Naruto continued, choosing to follow the same format that Kakashi had gotten him to use. "What about your likes and other stuff?" Naruto knew that the child didn't really want to know more about him, and just wanted as much time off working as he could get. "My likes consist of baseball, gardening and cooking. I dislike bullies, emos and fangirls. My hobbies are gardening and pulling pranks, and my dreams for the future are currently unknown." The entire class was amazed at how well Naruto spoke English, and questioned how long he had been studying it. Although he didn't appear particularly different, Naruto's voice had an Asian accent that immediately identified him. Now that he had to find a seat, he discovered that the only one was next to a girl in the back. The girl was about 4'6" tall and had the darkest blue hair he had ever seen. Her long hair covered 1/4 of her eyes, giving Naruto the impression that she was moody. She had a very gangly physique, and appeared to be as self-assured as a tortoise. To further support Naruto's perceptions, the girl wore only an overgrown dark blue sweater and dark blue pants. Naruto was annoyed by the poorly disguised laughter and the words "pooryu" as he made his way to his seat. Had he not just stated that he opposed bullying? Still being the kind person that he was, he asked the girl cheerfully if it would be okay to sit next to her. After receiving a small nod, he sat down next to her before tuning into the class, and discovering that they had mathematics. God, what a buzzkill. Naruto chose to commit a small prank to start what would turn out to be an absolutely incredible Legend of the Western Heights junior high prankster, after the teacher gave him another 5 minutes of dull lectures. He had planned to save this for a rainy day, but he was bored and needed a good laugh, so he pulled out his phone and pressed a button with a big smile on his face. The class stopped what they were doing when the door knocked, and the teacher went to open it without suspecting anything. Naruto couldn't believe the principal had let him do this, and he even helped him set it up before they asked if they could enter. The crazy old booger said something about lightening up the school, but Naruto wasn't really listening. When he opened the door, he was met with a face covered in paint, which caused the entire classroom to erupt in laughter. All of the laughter abruptly stopped for Naruto, but he was startled when he heard an almost angelic laugh from the seat next to him. He eventually came to the conclusion that he enjoyed the sound, and would now make it a habit to seek it out whenever he heard it again. Naruto's class remained dull, and nothing noteworthy occurred until lunchtime, even if he wasn't really interested in this kind of noteworthy. Naruto decided to intervene after noticing the girl he sat next to in class being harassed by 3 other girls behind a classroom during lunch. As the girl fought to contain her emotions, he heard the girls calling his backseat buddy names. As all 4 of the girls turned to face Naruto, he yelled out inquisitively, "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" He recognized at least 2 of their faces from class earlier in the morning, and assumed the other girl was most likely in a different class with their year group. The red-haired girl spoke up. "We're just stating fact about how weird this girl is," Naruto said, deciding to play a little prank on the group leader, who he could see was the leader right away. The girls left quite quickly after Naruto went over to see how they were doing. "And I could state a fact by saying you have no soul. But you don't hear me saying things like that, do you? Now scram," he said in a worried tone. "Are you alright?" The girl's form briefly appeared to waver, but Naruto dismissed it as a trick of the light, before listening to what she had to say. "Why?" The straightforward inquiry caught Naruto off surprise because he recalled asking Kabu the same question almost a month prior for same reasons. He chose to phrase it as his adoptive father had instructed. Before Naruto spoke up once more, the girl simply stared up at him. "I don't really know, all I know is, I see an innocent girl in trouble that needs help that I am able to provide," he said. The girl looked very hesitant at this point, as if she had never done this before. After a few moments of silence, though, she looked up into his eyes as her hair fell back behind her ears, and Naruto blushed at what had previously been hidden. "By the way, you already know my name, but I still don't know yours. Care to inform me?" she said. "Violet." Violet Par was said in such a low voice that Naruto nearly missed it, even at this close range. Naruto quickly recovered, then allowed a huge smile spread across his face before speaking again in a happy tone. Violet blushed as the implications of what he had just said hit home to her, but before she could stop herself, she responded with a okay that surprised both him and her. "So then, Miss Par, how would you like to become my first friend?" Naruto was picked up from school by Lucius and taken home shortly after, answering questions about his first day, while avoiding the fact that he had already pranked his teacher. Unfortunately, that was the only excitement of the day as class soon resumed before they were all released for the day. As soon as he arrived home, Lingerie-chan gave him a catalog before she even asked. Naruto had to ponder for a few seconds before responding to Kana. So what kind of flowers do you want? Violets. Though occasionally dull, Naruto's time at school has been fantastic thus far. He joined baseball on his second day and, thanks to his quick speed, he was able to make it into the top team and was now a regular, batting first and fielding at shortstop. To his chagrin, he had also gained a lot of popularity at school because of this and his propensity for pulling practical jokes. Despite a few near misses, he had managed to avoid detection thus far. Although he was well liked, he didn't really have any true friends outside of Violet, but their relationship had been a little strange from the start. Naruto frequently believed he had caught a glimpse of her at many of his baseball games, but when he checked to make sure, she was never there. Fortunately for him, they all appeared to already be in love with another boy named Anthony Rittinger. Although he was grateful for this, he didn't really get along with the brown-haired boy, because he seemed to carry an all too familiar aura of arrogance with him. It confused Naruto a lot and didn't help him at all, but he veered off topic. Although he would still require some sort of suit to prevent burns when using his powers, he was making good progress in his schoolwork, and had caught up to most of the class in the month he had been there. He had also discovered through training that, in addition to his own fire source, he could also extinguish other fire sources if he focused hard enough. In order to accomplish this, he started with one of the scented candles that had been discarded when he first moved in with the Best family. He would focus on using his abilities to extinguish the flame, and he had recently been successful in doing so. He had advanced to the point where he could extinguish a barrel full of flame in less than a minute. In terms of physical training, he had persuaded his adoptive parents to allow him to join a nearby gym, which he visited for at least an hour every day. He primarily used his time there to run and stay in shape because he was too young to lift any weights. This initially perplexed Naruto, but then he recalled all the instances of young ninjas suffering injuries from training too hard, and even older, more seasoned ninja, who had never fully recovered from previous training sessions. Nevertheless, Naruto kept himself in top shape for baseball, and his growing desire to break the law that superheroes were not permitted. He had read about it during a follow-up visit to the library, and had been perplexed as to why someone would sue someone for saving his life even if they no longer wanted it. When he asked Lucius, he was taken aback to discover that the man was being cautious about the topic. When he laughed and pointed out a superhero who resembled his adoptive father, the blonde's suspicions only increased. The superhero's name was Frozen, and Lucius would cringe every time he heard it. Naruto would have to look into this further later. But at the moment, it was a Friday afternoon, and he was getting ready to go to dinner at Lucius's closest friend's house. He was told that the man, Bob, or something, has children of his own, so it shouldn't be too difficult as long as they aren't pricks. Naruto completed his ensemble by donning a burnt orange tie that Kana had made him wear. He didn't understand why he needed to dress up if they were only going to a friend's house for dinner, but he chose not to argue with Lingerie-chan this time, because, after all, she had been taking care of his violets lately, while he had been going out more. When he was prepared, he approached his room's mirror, glanced at himself, and grinned at what he saw. His hair remained unruly, but even Kana seemed powerless to control it, much to Naruto's delight and her dismay. He was wearing a black dress shirt with a burnt orange tie on his torso, as well as black dress pants that were held up by a belt and fell over his polished black dress shoes. His whiskered face added to his rugged appearance, and he was certain he looked pretty handsome. He turned when he heard the door behind him open and saw Lucius grinning. Naruto flushed before scurrying after Lucius and protesting that he wasn't gazing at himself in the mirror. "Once you're done staring at yourself in the mirror, would you kindly join your mother and me in the car?" Naruto said. Lucius couldn't contain his laughter and burst out laughing. Kana was waiting for them as the two got to the car, looking a little irritated. Deciding not to aggravate the woman anymore, they hurried to the car, Lucius unlocking it and opening the door for his wife. The three finally got on the road after getting ready and dressed up. They were headed to see a friend of Lucius's, who Naruto had recently learned was the best man at the wedding of his adoptive parents. Since he still didn't know much about what he was getting into, he chose to ask Lucius and Kana about the family they would be visiting. He learned that the mother's first name was Helen, and that they had a daughter his age, a 10-year-old son, and a baby boy. But the information that shocked him the most was revealed as they pulled into the front driveway. Their last name was Parr, as in Violet Parr. No, of course not, it's just a coincidence, isn't it? Following his adoptive parents to the front door of the house, an now rather anxious Naruto knocked and was immediately greeted by the person he assumed to be Helen. What happened next, though, took everyone by surprise. The main spectacle didn't happen until Helen grabbed everyone's attention, but as soon as the four of them entered the living room, it became clear that this was, in fact, Violet Parr's home, because he spotted her sitting there with her back to him. When Violet turned to see what her mother was up to, she let out a loud squeal of surprise that caught everyone's attention. Then, she became completely invisible, and a lamp and some other furniture were flung around the room, as the embarrassed girl fled in terror to her room. Everyone was now just perplexed as they wondered what had caused Violet to act in this manner. That is, until Dash decided to reveal the truth, saying in a mocking tone that it was because her crush was here. This only made everyone more perplexed as Naruto blushed slightly, but Kana caught him with a knowing look and gave him a cunning smile that only made the preteen blush more before he regained control. He was a warrior, goddammit, and as far as he was aware, warriors don't blush. However, this caused Kana to react in a different way than he had hoped, as she had to fight the urge to swoon, as her adopted son attempted to contain his blush like a strong man. Naruto gave her a quick glare and expressed gratitude that no one else had noticed him blush. It was not to be for the blonde, though, as everyone else started to piece things together, and realized that he was the only person Dash could possibly be referring to. Helen appeared to react similarly to Kana, trying to contain her own squeals, before excused herself to speak with Violet about it. Kana soon followed, leaving only boys in the room as Naruto had to swallow as the tension started to get to him. Naruto looked to Lucius for assistance and found him on the floor next to Dash and Jack laughing openly. Naruto's perspiration dropped to the 3, but he knew that the baby was only doing it because his adoptive father and Dash were to blame. He saw the man give him a strong glare, but it was nothing he hadn't dealt with before, so the boy shook it off. Dumbest move number 1, Naruto thought to himself as Bob only seemed to grow more irate that he could do something like that. When Kana and Helen returned 5 agonizing minutes later with a very anxious Violet who had her hair down low so that her face was entirely concealed, they were completely stunned. Since Naruto didn't know either of the two families, they all introduced themselves as they sat down at the dining table that had been extended for the evening. From what Naruto could tell, they appeared like a decent group of people. At first glance, Dash was a little annoying, but Naruto saw that the child was a born joker, and it gained him points in Naruto's book. Jack baffled Naruto, who couldn't understand how he could be so joyful all the time, and assumed the infant didn't understand. Helen seemed pleasant enough, but based on the glances she gave him and Violet, he realized he would need to exercise caution around her. However, Bob was a different story. He appeared to glare at Naruto for 2 whole minutes before he introduced himself, as solemnly as it sounded, due to his wife coughing. They determined that Violet wouldn't need to introduce herself to him, because the two appeared to already know one another. Naruto chose to introduce himself to them in the same manner that he did to the class, since he could tell that they were interested in learning more about the child that the best family had adopted, and their daughter's sister's apparent crush. The Parr family, with the exception of Violet, was astonished by his unique likes, dislikes, and hobbies since they had never heard of him before, and they all seemed different from what they had anticipated. My likes consist of baseball, gardening, and cooking. I dislike bullies, emos, and fangirls. My hobbies are gardening and pulling pranks, and my dreams for the future are currently unknown, he said. At the moment, Dash was beaming broadly as he listened to the blonde's later pastime. Helen appeared to have a greater interest in the boy, and appeared to be suppressing her curiosity. Bob was making a terrible effort to maintain his scowl, while avoiding showing any interest in the boy his daughter was rumored to have a crush on. Then there was Jack, who just sat there grinning broadly as he picked up his mashed food and threw it back onto the plate in front of him, trying to clap as the food spilled all over the place. As he tried to finish the meal that had been prepared for him, Naruto was starting to feel quite anxious. Kana broke the tense silence that followed his introduction, although at the time, Naruto wished she hadn't. Violet's head only seemed to sink further at this, as if she wanted to dig a hole and hide in it. If things kept going this way, Naruto might join her, as everyone, including Jack, seemed to be completely focused on him. So how did the two of you meet? She asked, nodding towards Violet so Naruto understood her, even though it was already clear. Before responding to his adoptive mother in a quiet and apprehensive tone, the blonde coughed into his palm. We sit next to each other in class, he said foolishly, causing everyone to blink owlishly at him. Violet briefly lifted her head to glance at Naruto before quickly putting it back down. Seeing the girl's embarrassment, he chose to quickly end this by telling them about his first school lunch break. Everyone was paying attention as Naruto said, it was a lunch break on the first day, and saw that Violet's hat appeared to be embedding itself in the table. When I discovered Violet being harassed by 3 girls behind a classroom, I naturally ran up to them and asked, "What the hell are you doing?" They replied, "We're just stating facts about how weird this girl is," and I decided to play a practical joke on her by saying, "I could state facts by saying you have no soul. But you don't hear me saying things like that, do you?" before telling them to scram. Then, recalling something Lucius had told me when I asked him a similar question when we first met, I said, "I don't really know, all I know is, I see an innocent girl in trouble that needs help that I am able to provide." When I asked her if she was okay, she asked, "Why?" Violet just stared at me after that, so I asked her name, and she seemed hesitant to give it. She glanced up at me, and I saw her entire face for the first time before she gave it to me. I then asked if she would be my friend, and she immediately answered that she would. Naruto saw a wide range of emotions and expressions when he looked up after finishing. Bob appeared homicidal as he considered someone bullying one of his children, but he managed to appear at least somewhat appreciative of Naruto. He first saw Lucius, who was looking down at him with a fatherly pride and manly tears streaming down his face, realizing that Naruto had taken the man's words to heart. Naruto began to perspire again, as both mothers began to run over a list of people they would invite to the wedding, fawning over what had happened between the two. Ash appeared appreciative of Naruto, but he was keeping it a secret because he was her younger brother. They were playing which meal can survive the thrashing the longest again, Jack. However, Violet was the one who truly drew his interest since, while everyone else had been captivated by the tale, she must have become invisible and slipped away. Choosing to go and discover the precise location, he did the same obviously without becoming invisible. The blonde managed to slip away without anyone noticing and started looking for Violet. He followed a corridor that he thought led to the bedrooms, knocking gently on each door before entering it, and soon discovered that she or anyone else, for that matter, was not in her room. Considering what he would do in his home in Konoha whenever he was most distressed, he made the decision to check the roof. When he eventually found a way up, he was not shocked to see the girl stargazing, as he had done numerous times before. Choosing to show his presence, he lay down beside her. In a moment of conflict, the girl decided to be strong for once and inquired, "How did your crush find you?" Her initial reaction was disbelief. Violet's cheeks started to slowly flush, and Naruto simply stared back at her for a few minutes. "How did you find me?" He responded, "Because this is exactly what I used to do, whenever I fell down or troubled." Stargazing just seemed to take those problems away, and Violet looked at him in understanding, because that was the same reason she also tended to do this whenever she was feeling low. What she didn't understand, though, was that Naruto, the happiest person she had ever met, the one who always pulled practical jokes and brightened everyone else's day, could be hard on himself. She questioned him because she couldn't believe it. Naruto simply sighed in response to her remark, "How does one so joyous and strong ever feel down on himself? We are all human, Violet, and we all make mistakes. It's how we come back from these mistakes that determine our character. I myself use pranks and making others feel better, in order to feel better myself. I enjoy gardening and cooking for much the same reason as you enjoy stargazing. Because it distracts me from my past. My prison that I will continue to carry until the day I die." Violet's perspective on Naruto changed completely when she realized how much she still didn't know about him. She intended to change that as she watched Naruto and realized that nobody had it as easy as she had initially believed. Everyone had issues, and they all had to deal with them. On this same evening, she made the decision to start handling hers. When Naruto finally calmed down enough to think clearly after that experience at the Par's house, he decided to ask his parents what the deal was with Violet turning invisible at the beginning of their visit. "So Lucius, what was up with Violet when she turned invisible?" was a straightforward question that caused two gasps to sound out in surprise on the car ride home. Naturally, Naruto already understood the rationale behind it, since he deduced that she must possess abilities similar to his own. What baffled him, though, was that his adoptive parents pretended that it was entirely normal, which raised a number of questions that he was currently unable to answer. It would be annoying if he didn't try to find out, though. Lucius pulled the car to the side of the road, turned to face Naruto, and said. He then paused to look at Kana for confirmation before continuing where he left off after getting a nod from his wife. "Naruto, there is a secret that me and Kana have been hiding for your own protection, but I think it would be more dangerous for you to know parts of that secret, and not the whole thing." The blonde simply shook his head, realizing that was all he would be receiving for the time being, and Lucius started driving home again. The only change was the tension in the air. "When we get home we have something we want to show you about my past and about the Parr family in general." As the three of them entered the building, Naruto followed his parents into the living room, where Lucius started looking in the drawer for a remote control. Naruto couldn't help but feel a shiver of anxiety as he climbed out of the car, knowing that he would now receive the knowledge he had desired since that second trip to the library with Lucius, where he had discovered the heroes of the past. Puzzled by this, Naruto chose to remain silent, while Lucius turned around and pointed to the wall on the other side of the room, finally finding the one he was searching for. The youngster was hushed, but as the door opened up like in spy films when the main character goes to fetch his gun or guns, Frozen's super suit appeared in place of the guns. Lucius, I don't think that's going to war. Okay. Awesome was the one word that made Lucius smile, but Kana quickly erased it when she struck him over the head, albeit a tiny smile was still visible on her face as well. Naruto said, approaching the suit. As Lucius said, "So you were Frozen. No wonder you always got so jittery when I mentioned him or any other superheroes of the past." His wife adopted a rather pointed expression, as she struggled to determine whether she was proud of her son's keen observation, or angry at her husband's poor concealment of his past. Lucius and Kana simply nodded in surprise at how Naruto had deduced that Mr. Parr was Mr. Incredible, and his wife, Mrs. Parr, was Elastigirl. Even though he has Filled out a bit, Mr. Parr still holds remarkable resemblance to his superhero counterpart. After all, his mask didn't cover much. As for Helen, well, it was her hairstyle that really made it obvious, along with knowing for a fact that she did in fact have some kind of superpowers. His two adoptive parents were astounded by how a 12-year-old boy could figure out what the world could not, and were left speechless. The two gradually awoke from their daze at these two queries, and Lucius came forward to respond. So anyway, I know Violet has the ability to turn invisible, but does she have any other abilities that you know of? And do either Dash or Jack have powers as well? As the two adoptive parents started to question how on earth he was handling everything so well, Naruto simply nodded his head. From what I understand, Violet also has the ability to create force fields of her own. Dash can run really fast, and Jack's powers are unknown, he said. Kana decided to find out. That would be because I have a power of my own, Naruto said in a way that made it impossible to believe he was discussing something as incredible as himself. Kana and Lucius were astounded by the boy's words once more, and when they did, he fled before his adoptive parents could respond and returned from his room as soon as possible with a candle. After placing the candle on the floor in the center of the room and stepping back a little, Naruto gestured for Kana and Lucius to focus on it. When he saw that they had, he started to focus his energy, and before long, the candle was lit, causing his adoptive parents to gasp in shock. Kana questioned, "You can control fire?" But was perplexed when Naruto shook his head before he could respond. "Not fire but heat. I can control the heat around me and create fire from this. However, my own body is not fireproof, so without a suit of my own, I can't use it to its full ability, as currently I do not wish to die due to incineration." Now nodding their heads in understanding, the room was filled with an uncomfortable silence. Naruto broke the silence a few minutes later, saying he had to go to bed because he had baseball the following morning. However, after he left, the two adults found themselves discussing how to approach their adoptive son's abilities. After Naruto's game the following day, Lucius ultimately determined that it would be best for him to take Naruto to see Etna Mode to discuss getting a suit for his boy. He would then do everything in his power to assist his new son in any way he could. After all, it would be better for him to at least have control over his powers, and a way to prevent it from harming himself, than to accidentally cause someone harm by mistake, Lucius and Kana thought. After that, Lucius left to schedule a meeting with Etna for the next afternoon. After one of his training sessions with Nine Beast, Naruto woke up the following morning smiling because he was glad his new parents knew a little more about him personally, and was feeling upbeat for the game later. After getting ready for the day, Naruto soon found himself at the baseball field where he swore he saw Violet again, but immediately lost her. He knew she could turn invisible, but he knew that she was actually watching him from the stands. His manly instincts took over and demanded that he flaunt himself in front of her, which only made him more motivated to succeed. Not only did Naruto notice the girl's disappearance act, but Kana also saw the girl turn invisible when her son stared at her. She couldn't help but laugh to herself before letting out a longing sigh, and wondered where the good old days had gone. He made an impression since Naruto quickly discovered that he was having a great time after making it home twice, the second time being a home run. It was safe to assume that Naruto was satisfied with his batting because he fielded at shortstop and didn't let a ball go past him. Naruto was looking among the small gathering of parents who had come to watch their children play after the game, and was pleased to catch a glimpse of Violet's blushing cheeks before she once again used her talents. Despite her pledge to address her issues going forward, it appeared that it would take some time for her to develop love affections for Naruto. After the game, Naruto was taken aback when he learned of Lucius's afternoon plans as they drove into the surrounding countryside. Eventually, the three of them reached what Naruto could only characterize as a money waster, and he was baffled as to why one person would require such a large home. As Naruto approached the front gate, he saw a security guard appear on a video screen. Lucius promptly informed the man that they had an appointment before being permitted entry. As Naruto drove up to the house on the hilltop, he became even more confused when he saw all the ostentatious items scattered about that appeared to have been used hardly at all. Naruto's innocent query, "Hey, Lingerie-chan, why would someone need so much stuff?" caused Kana to frown and Lucius to smirk before the woman chose to respond, albeit in a dangerously seductive voice that gave the lads a little shiver of terror. "Naruto, she doesn't need it. She just has it because she can basically." She now waves her hands in frustration. She said, gaining a sly smirk at the end, "Still, if I had all that money I would probably do the same thing. And maybe even score a better husband." Lucius grasped his heart in mock hurt as he nearly crashed the automobile. "And who would this better husband be?" Lucius said in a frustrated tone, removing both hands from the steering wheel to use as quotation marks to emphasize his point. Kana gave the side window a fleeting glance, and adopted a rather hopeful expression. She turned back to Lucius and pressed closer, saying, "I don't know, I always thought that superhero by the name of Frozen was pretty hot." Lucius responded, "Yeah, I heard he was a pretty amazing guy," as he began to lean in the direction of his wife. Naruto then became enraged that the two were utterly disregarding the fact that he was still with them, and let a genuinely malevolent smile appear on his face, before directing his heat abilities towards the car's front tires, which caused them to abruptly flatten, and the two adults to collide heads. When he felt a death gaze from both of the people in front of him, the child stopped laughing and hurried out of the parked car, running toward the mansion's front door. Perhaps he ought not to have done it.